Alright everyone, it has now been confirmed, indeed Joey Biden did make a stinky poo-poo caca mess, and I think I know why, but I'm actually concerned because we're finding now from Centcom, it's been confirmed, that the second Afghanistan drone strike that the U.S. conducted, it didn't kill an ISIS member. It killed a USAID worker. This was speculated a week ago. It also killed a bunch of kids, a bunch of civilians. Biden has nothing to say about this situation, doesn't apparently care. But then again, he's never answers questions, or at least about things he doesn't want to answer them about. So, there's not going to be any closure from the legacy media. They're still generally not doing journalism. There are a few exceptions. I mean, they were covering the fiasco in Afghanistan, but they, by and large, they don't want to ask too many hardballs because Joe Biden might challenge them to a push-up contest and then stroke out, and then they'd be like, shit, no, I accepted his push-up contest and now everyone thinks I'm an assassin. Anyway, link in the description to this story. It is now confirmed, but it makes me worry that the first drone strike that we conducted, you remember that one that everyone hushed up about days later? Remember when Biden said we killed 2 ISIS planners, but we couldn't get their names or anything else about the attack? I've got a sneaking suspicion that they just decided to fucking pigeonhole some random house, vaporize a couple of people, and say, job well done. They just killed a couple of civilians, they weren't ISIS members, and it's all been hushed up. But since a bunch of kids didn't die as collateral damage, and since it wasn't in the middle of a street, I guess it was more difficult for the Taliban to use it as propaganda like it did with the second strike. So thanks to Biden, they have a really powerful recruiting methodology now. No wonder there are people in Kabul that are like, yeah, the Taliban's not so bad, they're doing a tolerable job. Well, considering the freaks that just left and the person leading them, I'd say, well, at least there are freaks, I suppose. Yeah, we got independence. Not of thought or of action, but hey, it's Afghanistan again. Anyway, first and foremost, before I go into this, and again, the big concern that I have is with the other drone strike nobody's talking about. I'll be talking about that briefly. Keep in mind down below there will be a pinned comment if you're watching this video on YouTube with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind I make 2 exclusive videos every day that go on those sites and they don't go on YouTube. Part of it's because of subject matter, part of it's because of my opinions on subject matter, and part of it is just the algorithms. YouTube no longer encourages people to be workhorses like it did a couple of years ago. Up until then, if you made 3 or 4 videos, it was better than just making 1. Now it rewards streaming more. It's really interesting since it literally was initially designed as a one-off site and had a 10-minute upload limit at first till about 2008. But getting beyond that, keep in mind that Biden initially and his people lied flat out about the drone strike here. Now Centcom is admitting, yes, it was a contractor and a bunch of civilians that died. Whoops, it was an oopsie poopsie caca moment. Now, nobody else can take the blame other than Biden, since I'm sure he personally okayed it. He himself had come out days before and said, we will retaliate, we will strike whenever we want, and it'll be on our terms, and we're going to punish ISIS for attacking the airport. So the punishment of ISIS for attacking the airport and killing 14 U.S. service people, as well as hundreds of civilians, the retaliation was 2 drone strikes. The first one supposedly killed a couple of ISIS planners, but we're not 100% sure because we don't know who they are. We haven't been given that information. The second one, it turns out, was a complete fumble, killed a bunch of kids and a contractor that was working for the United States. He had a car full of water bottles that he was carting around. He's an aid worker. Well, what a wonderful withdrawal. If something like that had happened, let's say Trump, honk honk, of course he didn't, most popular president ever, 10 scoops of ice cream. Assuming that Trump had gotten reelected. Totally didn't. And this happened, can you imagine? Everyone would be breathing down his neck. They wouldn't shut up about it. Because it's Joe Biden, they're back to talking about the COVID booster shots, which, it is newsworthy, but it's like, come on, dude. Centcom just confirmed that the president flat out lied to you, and he had already lied several times. This is the bigger problem. The bigger problem, Joe Biden came out to the American people several months before the evacuation and told us everything was fine. At roughly the same time, he made a phone call to the president of Afghanistan saying, yeah, I know that everything's not fine. It's actually fucking falling apart. But don't demoralize people. Tell them it's okay. He made not one move to evacuate Americans. All of the dead at the airport as the result of that ISIS attack are clearly Biden's responsibility. That's a lot of people. Over 100 civilians in the course of 2 attacks. All of those kids that got splattered by the drone. Nobody else okayed the drone strike. He explicitly stated that it was in the plans that we were going to strike ISIS targets. Only we didn't. I am very skeptical that that first strike killed ISIS planners too. Why wouldn't I be? It turns out that this one was horseshit. You know, initially we were getting reports, it was coming from the Taliban through Al Jazeera. And I was like, well, you know, I can believe that Biden would fuck up that bad, but I'm going to wait until there's some sort of confirmation. Of course, the next day we got that. By the way, wasn't this predicted by yours truly as soon as we heard about the drone strike? Oh yeah, I'm skeptical as to whether this actually was an ISIS target, because it could have been anyone. And they tailed this vehicle for several hours. The most damning indictment of this entire thing is how the strike was conducted. Now, you take a random shot at a building because you're like, oh shit, there's an imminent threat. They've got a fucking anti-ship missile. They're aiming it at a cruiser. We've got to take them out now. And then, of course, you find out they were erecting an umbrella or something. Okay, sometimes you make a spur-of-the-moment decision. It wouldn't extend to Biden. He might still get blamed for the fumble, but of course it wasn't highly pre-planned. It was more like, oh shit, something's happening here and now. We've got to act here and now. This was supposedly an instance of an imminent threat to the Kabul airport, but the drone tailed him for 2 solid hours, waiting to take the shot until there were a bunch of little kids around. Now, considering that 7 kids got vaporized in this attack with the drone's ordnance, if the trunk of this vehicle, pray tell, had been loaded down with a couple 100 pounds of plastic explosives, or even a crude bomb, don't you think maybe more kids would have been vaporized? Would have been a bigger explosion now, wouldn't it have been? And this is something that, again, Biden had spoken of several days before it was a planned attack. This attack was pre-planned. It was not spur of the moment. It goes all the way to Biden because of his statements to that effect. And it's obvious that they should have known, after tailing it for 2 fucking hours, that it wasn't actually a threat. And if they thought it was an imminent threat, why did they wait 2 hours to shoot it? Because it's bullshit. They probably knew to begin with. What happened is that Biden said this: I can either strike targets or I can avoid doing so. If I don't strike anyone before we leave, this is after the airport attack, if I do not retaliate, everyone's going to call for my resignation. His approval would be certainly well below what it is. That part can actually be understood. This was good strategy on Biden's part. The problem? We didn't actually strike the ISIS target. I am extremely skeptical that the first attack involved ISIS targets either. It could have been 2 totally random people out on the edges of Kabul. Just hit a building, says Joe. We need to look like we're being serious here because otherwise I lose my job, almost certainly. I'd have like sub Jimmy Carter levels of approval. So that fucks my presidency and everyone associated with me. That's not good for me personally. And number 2, it would invite more attacks. You know, we're still here for 3-4 more days. If they get the feeling that we're not going to do anything, they'll conduct 10 times as many strikes. They will attack the airport more. So, I mean, part of it is understandable. But the actual methodology, the amount of planning that had to have occurred in order for the specific timeline here to happen, and then the lies both before and after with regards to the situation in total, which is contravened by his talk with Ghani, and then afterwards by saying, oh, we'll retaliate, which we didn't in this case. We killed our own aid worker and a bunch of kids. And Afghanistan withdrawal in general, initially lying about who was killed in this strike, not even confirming until the other day that this actually was indeed a U.S. aid worker. The lies upon lies upon lies, and the timeline that doesn't make sense if you pay attention to the official Biden narrative is damning. That's about all. Peace out.